Hey everyone, you don't want to know what's going on in Aiken. You want to know what's shaking in Aiken. Hey, this is Brian Catonic, your Aiken local and realtor at Remax Tattersall. And welcome again to all, or this is your first time, welcome for joining me for the first time to Aiken's #1 podcast. So it's been a lot of fun. This is episode 9, if you believe it. So actually on my app that I use to put these podcasts out is called Podbean. And if any of you guys are thinking about having a podcast, Podbean is an excellent way to do it. You basically do your podcast, download it onto Podbean, and then they put it on all the sites like Apple Music, Spotify, iHeart. There's about 20 different sites. Never knew that. So when you do a certain number of podcasts, you get a little award. So after I do my podcast next week, be my 10th one, then I get a badge. And who doesn't like getting some recognition, especially a badge? So this is the start of my favorite time of the year. We know the dog days of summer are just about behind us. We got Labor Day weekend, and that means football. It means going out and doing stuff. In downtown Aiken alone, we have the Barbecue and Sweet Tea Festival. That's going to be on Friday and Saturday. There's no charge to go. So they're going to have all kinds of vendors downtown cooking barbecue, have a contest. Go by, taste it, help judge, and see who makes the best barbecue. I don't think they make sweet tea too. I think it's just a catchy thing to say barbecue and sweet tea. So head on down there. Speaking of the alley, my wife Carrie and I had a great time last Thursday. Being in our 50s, we don't get out like we did in our 20s and 30s. But last Thursday, I came home and told Carrie, said, hey, come on, get off the couch. We're going downtown. It's Amp the Alley. And if you don't know, every Thursday in the alley, when it's nice, they have a thing called Amp the Alley, where they have live music. They have vendors out there. They have beer vendors. You take some chairs, listen to the music. And I've been down a couple of times, but it was amazing the number of people that were down there. Even more amazing, being a lifelong resident and native of Aiken, how few people I knew. I think that just goes to show the influx of people we've had from all over the country coming to Aiken. But yeah, we had to walk around for a while to find someone we knew. And when we met them, we went up and said, hey, do you know anyone here? And they're like, no, not really. So it was kind of nice to see a few old faces. We met some new people. So we hung out for a while, listened to music. They had a guitar player playing kind of bluesy stuff, but he was good. So we'd already eaten at the house, had a couple of beers there, hung out for a little bit. And then Carrie said, let's walk down to the Cuban restaurant, which is down on Richland Avenue, about 2 or 3 blocks away. And if you haven't been there, it's a Cuban cigar bar. They also serve food. The food mainly smaller dishes, tapas type stuff. Carrie actually got a cigar. I've had some cigars. I'm kind of weak in that area. I guess I'm not a real man when it comes to cigars. So I kind of passed on that. Sat outside on the back porch, listened to some good music. Talked to our friends, the owner of the place we're going on the show. He came by and visited us for a while. He has a really interesting story. He actually came over from Cuba in the early 2000s. And it's kind of interesting how he came over. He was an adult at the time. And ended up in Miami, married his wife, who was of Cuban descent. And they actually have 2 businesses up here in Aiken. They've been here for about 3 years. Then we were there getting leave and met a young couple, a guy that's probably only in their 30s. And that's what they do. They are the new owners of a brewery here in town called Good Girl Brewery, which is out near the baseball fields. And I've been there once. Very cool place, very hip. And I told them that, I said, I've only been there one time, and you mainly sit outside on tables and chairs, and it was too hot. They said, yeah, we know that. Now fall's coming. This is going to be our busy time. And I said, I can believe it, because it is very cool. They make a lot of their own beer. They have some good food. So we're going to get them on the show as well. See, that's it, folks. Everyone wants to be on What's Shaking in Aiken, because it is the #1 podcast in Aiken. Have a real treat today. I didn't know until recently that we have a drive-through safari in Aiken County. That's right, you heard me right. A drive-through safari out near Sally, which is in the northeast portion of the county. If you've never been there, not a whole lot going on in Sally. So this is not downtown Sally. It's about 10 miles outside of Sally. And we're going to have the owner of the place. It's a fascinating story. But I went a few weeks ago for the first time with my daughters. They've been telling me about it. And I'm telling you what, it's a great place. I mean, it takes like an hour and a half to drive through there. You feed these animals. But I don't want to give it too much away right now. But stay tuned for that because he was a fascinating guy. As far as what's going on in the news in Aiken, I told you about the Barbecue and Iced Tea Festival downtown Aiken. Just on the news today that out by I-20, out where US 1 hits I-20, that we're going to have a new development. So a lot of people are probably saying, well, do we really need a new development in Aiken? Well, we're getting one. It's going to be built on 87 acres. Ultimately, they plan to have 284 homes out there. And I can see this being a productive and a good subdivision for sales from the standpoint of if you work in Augusta or Columbia, you literally are right at the exit ramp or exit 22, and you can pop on the interstate and get to your jobs. Now, if you're thinking, do we need another subdivision? Well, originally in March, this land was earmarked to be a chicken processing factory. So I'm just telling you, friends, if there's a difference in a chicken processing factory and a subdivision, you want a subdivision. I've had people, clients back when I was a lawyer working chicken processing factories, and when asking them about them, they're like, well, one thing when you work there, you're never again going to eat chicken. So that's not for me. I like chicken more than steak. So we're not having a chicken processing factory. We are having a new subdivision. So that would be interesting. So any other news? Last week, of course, you probably know, it's a little bit old news now. Someone hit the wall on Whiskey Road yet again. So in growing up in Aiken and talking to some other old Aiken friends of mine, we can't recall the first 50 years of our lives anyone hitting the wall. And that is coming down Whiskey Road from the south boundary, right where it turns there, hitting that wall ever. I mean, ever. I never recall that. Looking at the article in the Aiken Standard, in the last 5 years, it's been hit 9 times. So the one that happened a week ago Saturday, it was a delivery driver. He said he fell asleep. It was 5:30 in the morning. So I guess he could have fallen asleep, but he really took it out. I've talked before to the homeowners who live at the house behind the wall. They're tired of fixing it. I don't think their insurance will pay for it anymore. So I guess we're going to have a hole in the wall there for a while. So if you do decide to go to Aunt Alice night, go to the Cuban place, have a few drinks, don't go down Whiskey Road and hit the wall. Probably won't be good for a lot of reasons. Okay, everyone. I am very, very excited today for my guest that I have on. We have Mark Nesbitt. And Mark is the owner and operator of Eudora Wildlife Safari. Is that right?
It's Eudora
Excuse me.
Safari Park. Yes, sir.
And if you guys don't know about it, it's pretty amazing. We have a drive-through wildlife safari here in Aiken County out towards Sally. And I heard about when it opened and, never really thought about going, but I went for the first time a couple of weeks ago. And guys, I'm telling you, it is so nice. At one point, I turned to my wife and I said, this is like Disney level nice. This is really nice and it's a lot of fun. So I wanted to have Mark on to talk about it. So Mark, how are you doing today?
Well, I am doing great. I have been in Aiken right here on this farm for about 30 years.
30 years. Okay. All right. So the big question I have, a lot of people have is, how in the world did you decide to have a safari here in Aiken County, South Carolina?
Well, that's a really good question, and ever since I was young, growing up in North Carolina, my mom was a single mom, school teacher, raised myself and my daughter or my sister in an apartment there in Morganton, North Carolina, which is a little west or a little east of Asheville. And so growing up, I always had just a big interest, big love for animals. One of my favorite shows was Mutual of Omaha,
Sure. Marlon Perkins.
Jacques Cousteau, where there was a few specials back when I was growing up. And then, of course, Disney was something most all kids look forward to on Sunday. And most all those movies were animal movies, from Old Yeller to Where the Red Fern Grows, and
Sure.
different things like that. So I've always loved animals. My mom did everything she could in an apartment to try to encourage that interest that I had, and so I just carried that throughout all the way through college, and right out of college, I went to work for LabCorp, which is a clinical laboratory. Their initial home office was in Burlington, North Carolina, where I went to college at Elon, and it eventually became Roche, part of Roche, and then was owned by purchase. They formed Laboratory Corporation of America, and I started in sales, got promoted to South Carolina as a sales manager, and I was showing dogs. And from that, we decided, well, we need to try to find some property outside because of a city and stuff. And so it really didn't matter where I lived because I covered most all of South Carolina. And so just going through the real estate stuff, and we found our farm here, about 30 acres at the time, and just a tiny little house, and so that's how we got here. And then from there, just we had some interest. People at that time, this was about 30 years ago, emus and ostriches were kind of a big thing.
Okay.
And we were looking at doing that and as something on the side, but they were so expensive. But the some of the journals where those were in, they had other animals in there, and we ended up getting a couple miniature donkeys, and we had a small little area that we cleared out because it was real wooded and stuff here, and had maybe an acre of grass. And so, those little donkeys probably never going to eat all that grass. And then one thing led to another. And so that's kind of how we got started.
Okay. So what was the first exotic animal that you acquired?
The first one that I acquired was a Watusi cow, and
Okay.
we got that from a safari park in North Carolina. And so the one there in North Carolina, that was really our first experience of a safari park to actually see one. And it was just amazing to me, and just to see the herds of animals that were in such a natural setting. And I said, one of these days that would certainly be something I would love to do. So we got the Watusi, and that kind of got us started. And we eventually got a camel, and his name was Bubba, and he was a big part of everything we did. And so we raised Bubba, and we actually started doing some different events, nativities, different churches, vacation Bible schools. And we would do these on the weekends because I was working for LabCorp at the time. And then when I was getting ready to get married, I convinced my future wife at that time to see if she would let me take her on Bubba down the aisle. And so we worked that out. And so when we got married here on the farm, Bubba rode her down the aisle here at our small farm then, and and that was just the beginning, and just the love and the interest of wanting to one day to have a safari park.
That's funny. So Bubba was the best man at the wedding.
Bubba definitely was.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
sure was.
So the safari now, you opened that up, I think, in 2020.
In 2020, yes, sir. During the pandemic.
So at that time, when you opened it, how many exotic animals did you have at that time?
Well, at that time, and again, it was really a kind of a process that happened, a journey that happened. So, as I said, I was with LabCorp right out of college, and from 1983 or 84 up up until the early 2000s. And then I ended up losing my job at LabCorp, but we were doing some things on the weekends, camel rides and stuff, different festivals. And so we started an interactive educational animal exhibit. And so we were doing local festivals, a couple local fairs, because we really only had, like I said, starting out 30 acres. And then at that time, we only had about 30 acres. And so we started doing that. And that was just really a great experience and a great preparation for what we wanted to do down the road, which was a safari park. But we knew it was too small for what we did. But we did start doing some horse-drawn wagon rides here on that 30 acres. The actual safari park that we had gone to, that's what they used. They had horse-drawn wagon rides.
Okay.
Took the groups through the safari park, and they had Belgians, Percherons, and draft horses. So we had gotten a couple pairs of Belgians and Percherons, and we started doing a few special events on the weekends, and we did a few schools, where we did field trips where they would come out. But so that was kind of the beginning, and a lot of the experience with the public and everything we learned as we were doing those events across the country. We eventually started doing a lot of state fairs throughout the United States, the New York State Fair and the Illinois State Fair. We still do the Georgia National Fair in Perry, Georgia. And so all that helped us get better prepared, and then gave us opportunity years later, probably about 15 years ago, some of the property next to us, which was owned by a timber company, they started willing to start selling some of that. And so they had harvested all that land that was right behind us. So we bought 15 acres, and they were kind enough to owner finance it for us, so that made it easy. And so we bought that, and then the journey kind of when I would be home during the off season, we were having it stumped and getting it prepared, and then we sprigged it. And said, well, if we don't ever open a safari park, we'll at least be able to cut hay. And then a couple years later, we paid for that, and then we bought another 15, and just kind of did that whole process until we got close to 2020. And then that was when we were thinking about, well, we're getting enough property now, and we might be able to do a safari park. And back then, too, earlier, we're so far out. It's such a rural area. We're really in the northeastern part of Aiken County, which is extremely rural. And without any social media or anything like that, back 15 years ago, 20 years ago, we knew it would be really challenging to ever be able to get enough people to support a park. But things had progressed, and it was just, the good Lord knows when to open doors, when to close doors. And so those doors for the safari park really weren't happening. But then over time, it started coming to fruition. And so then in 2020, the pandemic started closing all of the activities that we did off site, like it did everywhere else. They weren't allowing public gatherings and stuff. So, of course, we did a lot of fairs and events like that. So it depended solely on the gathering of people and interacting. So all those events started closing. And as they closed, we started trying to figure out, well, what are we going to do until this thing passes? Because about 8 or 10 people who worked for us on that we did the events, they were all locally from our local community. And we wanted to make sure that they were continued getting their income as well. Um, so, my connections with other safari parks, kind of watching them, they were starting to do really well. It was sort of the perfect storm. If you think about it, it was
That's what I
something.
was thinking. A drive-through safari park, you don't interact with anyone. It's kind of the ideal event for people to do.
It was, and so because you do it in your car, you're doing it with the people that are in your household, um, and you're not having to interact with other folks. So the safari parks, unlike zoos and stuff at the time, were doing really good because it was something people could do. So decided, well, if we're going to try it, we probably should go ahead and try it here pretty soon because the pandemic might end at the end of the
Right.
summer, and that's kind of what we were thinking. And so this might be a good little kickstart for us. And then we'd go back. We kind of figured we'd go back and start doing up the events that we did off site anyhow in a few months because initially, if you remember, it was, when summer really came, the pandemic, the coronavirus wasn't going to be an issue. The heat and
Right.
stuff is just not going to. So a couple nights before we decided to open on Mother's Day, we said, well, I need to get out there and make a path, so cars will
Yeah.
know where to go because it's just a big field. And we only had about 100 animals total. We had the ones that we used in our educational exhibit. And then we had um, 8 or 10 zebras. We had camels, a few camels, and a few other antelope, and a lot of those were animals that we had used in our educational show over the years. And when it wasn't once they got fairly big, we decided, well, we'll just hold on to them because one day we're going to try to open this park. Um, but again, it was just really, kind of in the back of your mind that, hey, we're going to do this, but at the same time, it was, do you really want to step out of that box and do that? So whether or not it was going to happen, I'm not ever sure. But when the pandemic happened, it kind of forced us to relook at what we were doing to see if we could make sure we could keep our bills paid and stuff. And so a couple nights in before Mother's Day, went out on the riding lawnmower, made a path. It was actually the trail that you rode your vehicle on. That was the path
Same
that I
path. Okay.
made. And it was real easy to see because the grass was so high back then. And so we did that, opened up and opened on Mother's Day weekend. And that was the beginning.
Okay. So right now, how many animals do you have at the park right now?
So in the safari park, we have approximately about 400 that are actually in the park.
My gosh. Okay. Okay. Interesting. So one day when we were out there, like, how do you know what animals will get along with other animals? Like they all seem to get along fine, but do you have to kind of weed them out if there's aggressive animals, or how does that work?
Well, and that's a good question. And part of that journey, moving up to this point, going to other parks, seeing how they did their layouts and the animal mixes that they had, a lot of the safari parks have similar groups of animals, and that's kind of how we decide that everything that we have, as you notice, is all hoof stock
Hmm.
that we have in the park. So these are all, most everything is all ruminants other than the zebras. Um, they're all herding animals, and most all herding animals are considered flight animals. They're not predator animals, so
Okay.
they kind of do their own thing. They kind of stay with their group. By nature, even in the wild, they get along well with all other hoof stock.
Okay.
Their biggest fear are the predator animals, from lions to animals in North America, from wolves to panthers, things like that, or lions or tigers and
Yeah.
stuff. So all animals here, by by their natural habitat, they get along.
So,
If you see when you're watching Animal Planet or any of those shows, when they go to the water hole, you'll see, different breeds of antelope, elephants, zebras, all of that. So they get along as far as that goes.
so for people listening to this, if you have not been here, so you'll go there and you pay your admission and you buy these little things of food, and as you drive through, you open the windows, and it seems more these animals have learned quickly car means food because they will quickly come out your car window because they know it's dinner time.
That's right. Yeah, they do, and like I said, all the animals that we have, they are in the what we say the people business,
Yeah, yeah.
So and every now and then it's just like in any group of people or animals or anything, there are always a few that aren't this it's not their forte or something that they're interested in. Any animals like that. We have an area in another part of our park that if we have a camel or something that's not great, it's not interested in doing this. So they don't have to be a part of the park. They're not in there.
Right.
So most all of these guys, though, it's just by nature, accept well to that. And the neat thing is they're in a position because it's a little over 200-acre safari park. Those animals, they're not depending on us, on my staff per se, to make sure that all of their needs are fulfilled. In other words, they get a lot of natural enrichment. They're able to fulfill that on their own, kind of in a sense like they would if they were out in their own natural habitat. Obviously, it's no comparison to being in Africa or somewhere like that, but in a small sense, it somewhat is because they have to make decisions between the big Watusi cows you saw with the big horns, or the small little black buck antelope, or the eland. When to go to the water troughs, when to go to a car if they want to get food or if they want to graze. They have to make those decisions. They're not depending on me to make them for them. They have to make them. They have to decide, is it safe to go up there? So if there's a bigger, more physical animal, a big water buffalo or an American bison, the smaller animals know, well, that's, it's not time to go up there. I have to wait my turn. And when the opportunity's there, I'll go up. And just like what they would in the wild, they have to make that kind of decision.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting that when you're talking about like the little animals did seem to know when to hold back if Big Boy was coming up to the car.
Yeah.
So when you started on that Mother's Day back in 2020, how many people did you have that first day?
Well, the first day, I think we had like 20, maybe 10 to 20 cars that first day. That was like that Thursday or Friday. And so that was really exciting because we really had no idea what to expect. And I said, well, that's going to be enough that we can make our payroll. We can pay our staff. So hey, if we can do that,
yeah,
things open back up, we'll be great. So
right now, on, let's say, average Saturday, how many cars do you get?
On average, now, like last weekend, last Saturday, we had about 300 cars, and Sunday, I think we had a little under 200. We open at 12 on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, during the pandemic, the cycle, the way things worked after that first weekend, it was sort of encouraging. But then again, the whole process was like I said, the good Lord knew, that there's truly a plan there, and
Right.
things were starting to happen. So you stop and think about it, yeah. So we had those 20 or 30 people came on that first day, and then so for the weekend, it was about 20 or so per day through Sunday, and then so when they go home, they really don't have anything to do other than watch Netflix, or you remember, and that was the big thing. Everybody's watching all the shows and
Watching,
movies.
watching Tiger King.
Tiger King, all that kind of was happening, and then to get on social media and share photos and pictures with their family and friends, and so that had a major positive impact on us. So people
Sure.
were wondering, where's this place? Where's this at? And that really helped us to get the process. And then the next week we opened, I think, on a Thursday, and I remember walking down our dirt road, but where we had the entrance at the time, and this was about a 30 or 40 minutes before we opened, and there were 3 or 4 cars already in line.
How about that?
And I was just like, oh, this is amazing. And so that week it picked up. By the second week, we walked down there about an hour before we opened, and there were cars already in line. And our dirt road we are on the dead end. So from the entrance of the park to the end of the dirt road's a half mile. And that morning, an hour before we opened, there were cars lined up all the way down the road waiting to come in. And it's just amazing. It's like the Lord, showed favor on us, and it was just unbelievable. And
it sounds like that's the last scene in the movie Field of Dreams, where he builds the baseball field with a line of cars everywhere.
Yeah, and then by the end of the month of May, into June, and all through the whole summer, most every day every day of the week, they would be 2 to 3, sometime a 4-hour wait to get to the entrance of the park.
Wow.
That's how long it was. And then the park was bumper to bumper all the way inside the park. And so there started to be many days during that summer and into that fall, that we had to get signs made and different things. So we'll tell how long the wait was, because people were coming from all over. They were coming from Charleston, Savannah, Florence, Augusta, just all over, coming a long ways. And we'd have to get on social media, let them know, hey, we have a 2-hour wait, we have a 3-hour wait, because you hated for people to come all the way from Savannah or Charleston.
Sure.
And they come at 5 o'clock, and we've had to close the gates because we got a 3-hour wait for them to get into the park and out. So that was a challenge. So we had many days we were having to not allow any more cars to be able to come in at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah.
Because it would take that long to get everybody through before dark.
So Mark, another question when I was there is like when you decided, hey, we need a new emu or a new water buffalo, like how does one go about acquiring that? I mean, are these animals now born domestically, or do they come from overseas? Where do you get these animals?
Yeah, that's a good question. Right. All the animals, every animal that we have in most every park, most very few animals are nowadays imported.
Okay.
So nothing is imported. Everything that we have was either born here on our park, or were born from other safari parks. Our giraffes, for instance, they're probably 5-6 generation American born.
Is that right? How about that?
Yeah. And so and part of our mission is it's not only for this to be, a great opportunity for people to do as a family and with their friends, to go through the park, as you probably did. You probably had a lot of laughs, a lot of
Absolutely
fun times, memories that are going to last forever. but also for people to see animals that maybe they don't get a chance to get up that close or to reach and touch. Or it could be a wildebeest, it could be a African eland, a giraffe, and you're up there that close. And then also to learn about the animal conservation about what's happening in where they are from, the loss of habitat and different things. And then in hopes that people, because we do a lot of wagon rides, and on those wagon rides, we have safari guides on there. And so part of what they're doing is a big educational process, not only making sure people are safe and having a good time, but also, learning about these animals and where they're from and what's happening in, their impact, and some that are on the close to being on the endangered list and why that's happening. And in hopes that people go back, and kids, particularly, then they do more research looking into those things and maybe make, some might make a decision that, hey, this is something I want to have a part in, that what's happening in different parts of the world.
Yeah. So, do most of these animals adapt fine to the climate here? Like if it gets too cold, you have to put them up, or how's that work?
They do, and again, that's a big part of our process of the type of animals that we do have here, and that they are acclimated, for our environment. Keeping in mind, genetically, animals are totally different than people, and our domestic animals like dogs and cats to some degree, as far as how their bodies are designed to keep them cool, how they're designed to keep them warm. They have different built-in processes, like the Watusi cows, if you remember seeing ones with the big, huge horns.
Okay, yep, I saw them.
Well, with those horns serve a lot of purposes. Number one, the main purpose is that horn works like a radiator for their bodies, and it allows their blood to flow through those horns. And that actually works as a cooling process for their body. And many of them like have big dewlaps, which is a big piece of skin that hangs from their necks that you see. And that does the same thing. It helps to radiate heat. Same with the camels, with their leg height and different things like that. So they're designed. Now we do have some like the giraffes. They have a barn that is heated and controlled temperature, and so every night they come up, and they're kept up in their stalls at night, and then depending on the weather in the wintertime, particularly if it was cold and damp and rainy, then in that situation they don't go out in that.
Okay.
But if it's 40 degrees and sunny and the wind's not blowing or anything, which is a lot of the weather we do get in South Carolina, they can go out and they're great and enjoy the winter days like that. But then they also are able to go in, and all the animals have a lot of natural protection from the environment, which would be naturally what they would do. But we also have different shelters for them, so that if they'd like to go in there, that they can choose to do that as well.
So, Mark, if someone wants to come out to the park, tell us what's the days you're open, the hours of operation, and all that stuff.
Okay, yes, we're actually open every day of the week, Monday through Sunday. We are closed on Thanksgiving and Christmas. We open at 9 every morning. We close the entrance gate at 5. So as long as you get in by 5, it can take as long as you like. They can go through the drive-through park during the day as many times as they like. There's also a safari village that they can get out of their car if they'd like, and there's the petting zoo there, the parakeet adventure, so some other games and things that kids can do, and then they can walk around over to the giraffe exhibit, and there they can feed them. We're in the process under construction now with the new giraffe observation deck. And that's going to be really exciting. People will be able to go up and feed them on the deck. They'll be able to have their lunch up there. There'll also be a boardwalk that goes all the way around their entire enclosure and puts you really sitting out into the zebra and out in their area that you'll be able to view and to just sit out there and enjoy. And then we have a small walkthrough safari that has 5 enclosures, and that's a real shaded area where they can go in, and even in the hot South Carolina summer days, it has such a thick canopy that when you're walking through there, it is fairly comfortable.
So, folks, I'm a big Disney fan. I've been to Animal Kingdom a ton of times. The safari ride down there. I'm telling you, this place rivals that. In some ways, it's better because you get much closer contact with the animals. It's a fantastic place. I don't care if you're old, young, kids, adults, whatever. It's a great time. Get out there, put in your GPS, ride out there every day of the week. Mark, thanks so much for coming on and telling about it. It's fascinating, and I'll let you know next time I head out there.
Please do. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity to be part of your podcast.
All right. Hey, have a good one. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Mark as much as I did. Again, it's a wonderful place. Head out there this week. It's Labor Day. Go on Monday. So again, I always tell you, thanks for listening. And you don't want to know what's going on in Aiken. You want to know what's shaking in Aiken. See you next week.